Hey guys, I kind of need some help. My friend and I just got into this disagreement about Black Lives Matter. She doesn't think it's important or relevant, and I just don't know how to educate her, and I need your help.
Wow, I can't believe that your friend is so uneducated about this topic, considering how many misinformed biases and assumptions there is about this community.
Yeah, there are so many reasons the Black Lives Matter movement is important.
The African American community faces so many hardships, and that's why the Black Lives Matter movement even started.
Maybe you can show her this awesome presentation.
Okay, so starting with demographics about African Americans, they are the second largest racial minority group in the United States. That means they are about 13.4% of the population. That is Black individuals alone, although Black alone or in combination with another race, they make up 14.7% of the population. In 2017, most African Americans lived in the South, which is about 58% of African Americans. The 10 states with the largest Black population in 2017, in this order, were Texas, Georgia, Florida, New York, North Carolina, California, Illinois, Maryland, Virginia, and Louisiana. In 2017, 87% of the Black adults ages 25 and older had a high school diploma or equivalent. In 1993, the high school completion gap was twice as large, 14 points, compared to as it is today, 7 points. The share of Black adults ages 25 and older who have completed 4 years of college or more has doubled during that span, from 12% in 1993 to 24% in 2017. The Black immigration population as well has increased fivefold since 1980. Immigrants are making up a growing number of the overall US population. Although the Black immigration population is growing twice as fast, there are about 4.2 million Black immigrants living in the US in 2016. Since 2000, the number of Black immigrants in the US has risen 71%. Black lives matter because they're just becoming a bigger and bigger part of our population as the United States, and a lot of people aren't realizing this. Black households, Black households have only 10% of cents in wealth for every dollar held by white households. The wealth gap increased between middle income Black and white families, but shrank between lower income families and white families from 2007 to 2016. Most of the reduction in the wealth gap among low income families was caused by the sharp decrease in wealth for white people. There has been a gradual increase in the share of for Americans who view racism as a big problem in the US, especially among African Americans. In 2017, 81% of the Black population said racism was a big problem in society today. This has increased up from 44% in 2009. An overwhelming majority of Black Americans, 92%, believe white people benefit at least a fair amount from advantages that Black people do not. 68% of Black adults believe that white people benefit from being white a great deal, which is another reason why Black lives matter. There's been this racial disparity in this country for so long. White people have a lot of advantages that Black people do not.
There are so many social problems that African Americans face. So we're going to talk about a couple of them. So first, individual racism is the negative attitude one person has about all members of a racial or ethnic group, often resulting in overt acts such as name-calling, social exclusion, or violence. Another part of that is institutionalized racism, which is discriminatory acts and policies against a racial group that pervade the major macro systems of society, including legal, political, economic, and educational systems. Discrimination is built into our society. Sadly, it's what our country was founded on. Examples of this is putting less qualified people or lower quality services in diverse neighborhoods, providing more information about resources to white clients compared to diverse clients, discrimination in hiring practices, promotions, and raises, sentencing African Americans more severely and more frequently than white people who committed the same or similar crimes. All of these social problems that will be discussed are forms or products of institutionalized racism. Macro systems such as the criminal justice system, education, employment, and others have elements of institutionalized racism.
Another social problem African Americans face is differing family structure. African Americans tend to have high rates of single parents. The average rate of female-headed homes in African American families is nearly 3 times that in white families. African Americans tend to have high abortion rates. It is estimated that 30% of all abortions in America are done by African American women.
Another problem is economic inequality. As Kiya just said, a lot of African Americans have one parent families, and usually it's a woman leading the family. Poverty affects one parent families significantly more than two parent families. The wage gap is worse when race is taken into account. Women of color earn significantly less than white women. Banks and insurance companies often used to refuse African Americans for loans and insurance because they were they deemed areas that were predominantly filled with people of color as high risk. This prompted African Americans to not be able to accumulate wealth or pass it down as white Americans did. The African American unemployment rate generally doubles that of the population as a whole.
Another problem is disproportionately targeted by law enforcement. The war on drugs, which began in the 1980s, is the leading cause of high rate of incarceration among African Americans, especially males. African Americans tend to face mass incarceration. Due to the high incarceration rate, one in every 9 African American children who pass on the sidewalk may have or has a parent in prison. Police brutality against African Americans seems to be becoming more frequent and noticed, which has led to an uproar in the Black Lives Matter movement.
The final social problem that we're going to talk about today is education. African American children, on average, score lower on tests and are even given lower grades than other students, such as Asian, white, or Latino students. And examples of this is that on the SAT and the ACT, those tests are kind of used against African Americans and not the wording is used against them. Some African American children do not have learning environment that includes opportunities to develop school-related language, knowledge, and skills such as literacy and understanding in standard English, mathematics, or science. Exposure to the extremes of poverty, poor treatment from law enforcement, and policies and practices that seem to be against children of color can be stressful for children, so stressful for children that their development potential is compromised or distorted.
Some unique strengths and resilient qualities that African Americans do have are their close-knit relationships with their families in regards to moral support and in times of crisis. Their family network functions as a support of stability in their lives, and they provide their children with developmental support that's needed for healthy development. African Americans that are low income or don't have equal access to education are assumed to not do well in life or to be uneducated, but based on studies, their resilience shines through and they're stronger in areas such as social competence and language. And their strength in language often leads to success in reading. Being resilient and social competence more often than not leads to higher levels of school readiness. And African Americans are more resilient in terms of mental health because they are less at risk for depression, anxiety, and suicide.
So there are a lot of misinformed assumptions and biases about this community. The first bias that I'm going to talk about is involved with healthcare. Black people with important medical needs were less likely than equally ill white people to be referred to receive help that provides more individualized care. So, an algorithm commonly used in the US hospitals to distribute healthcare to patients has been logically discriminating against African Americans. According to Heidi Ledford of Nature News, A study concluded that this algorithm was less likely to refer Black people than white people for this care. Hospitals and insurers use the algorithm and others like it to help manage care for about 200 million people in the United States each year. And it's basically like the odds are against the Africans. The second bias that I would like to talk about is youth drug use. So many people have the assumption that African American youth are typically substance users, but most people are surprised to learn that African American youths are remarkably less likely to use tobacco, alcohol, and other drugs than other white or Hispanic Americans. And according to Dr. Monica Williams of the Psychology Today, large-scale national surveys like the National Comorbidity Survey find that African Americans are remarkably less likely to have substance use disorders than their white equivalents. The next one has to do with pain. Myths do say that healthcare has aided biases and twisted perceptions of Black people's pain levels. According to a doctor in the Journal of Medicine, it has provided disastrous outcomes for a study that speaks on the absolutely absurd yet common belief among medical trainees that Black people have a higher pain tolerance than whites. And because pain can present itself in so many ways, its management remains at the clinician's inclination. So this establishes chances for a biased decision. And the last bias that comes about is having to do with wrongful convictions. And according to Samuel Gross of the National Registry of Exoneration, African Americans are only 13% of the American population, but they are a majority of innocent defendants wrongfully convicted of crimes and then later exonerated. They constitute 47% of the 1,900 exonerations listed in the National Registry of Exonerations, and this was as of October of 2016. And the great majority of more than 1,800 additional innocent defendants who were framed and convicted of crimes. And this is only the ones found not guilty, meaning that there's endless amounts of cases that could possibly be added to these numbers.
Wow, that was such a great presentation, guys. I think my friend's going to realize now why Black Lives Matter are so important and significant, especially in society right now.
That's so good. I'm glad that we could educate her in such a great way.
Yeah, this was a great presentation. Thank you for your help, everyone.
No problem.